Previously on Gaming Legends. A local boy and his pet Otzel were tasked with saving the world while suffering from waist-level paralysis. As usual, Jak did literally all of the work while Daxter just sat on his shoulder. In fact, he was so useless that the sequel cut his name from the title altogether. Can you beat Jak II Renegade without jumping? Unlike last time, we actually have an official jump counter to work with now. But it's not found in Jak II, it's in Jak I. Since my original jumpless video, Jak and Daxter the Precursor Legacy was given a PS5 release with save states and rewinds. This version of the game has a trophy called Daxterous Performance, awarded for finishing Geyser Rock in 12 jumps or less. This trophy defines jumping as pressing the X button while on the ground and specifically includes jumps, crouch jumps, roll jumps, and the punch to uppercut combo. Most importantly, I now have definitive proof that the controversial super dive attack is officially, legally not a jump.
Vindication!
The only rule changes from the last video are the allowance of double jumps specifically, jumping from a ledge grab, and jumping while swimming. There were some actions that were sadly untestable, but I applied the same logic to them anyway for the sake of consistency. Pole jumps are allowed since they're not performed on the ground. The jet board technically doesn't touch the ground, but its jumps and high jumps can only be done from ground level, so they're banned. For vehicles, using L1 to jump is banned, but mounting and dismounting with triangle is allowed. And finally, the level select menu is banned entirely, as it can only be unlocked if you've already beaten the game on at least one save file. There is also one last elephant I need to address. Jak II features an in-game debug mode, which can be enabled by inputting a cheat code on the pause menu or title screen. Debug mode allows you to, among other things, reposition Jak wherever you want, including full altitude control. Now, on the one hand, this would obviously be a cop-out and not a very interesting challenge. But on the other hand, I am bad at video games. For the sake of convenience and preserving what little sanity I had left, I used debug mode to essentially create additional checkpoints during the run. But I never used it for anything that I hadn't already done legit. So basically, it's allowed, but do it yourself first. With the semantics locked in, let's escape from the fortress.
Do you remember how to jump?
No, but I remember how not to jump. Hold L1 to crouch, then press square to perform a crouching uppercut, allowing us to clear most of the jumping tutorials. Distance is a bit of an issue, but we can spin in the air to get extra hang time. The crouch jump tutorial is too tall for an uppercut alone, but we can dive out of it with square, then hold X in the air for a super dive to bounce much higher and grab the ledge. We do still need to pull ourselves up, but remember, that's perfectly legal. As is the pole jump here, which I did try my best to bypass anyway, but my success was sadly limited. The hardest part was the roll jump tutorial. The first gap can be cleared by using the air vent as a stepping stone, but the second has only flat walls and a bottomless pit. I tried using a super dive to get over, but we just don't have enough momentum. But there's another trick we can do, the boosted uppercut. If we do a crouching uppercut from the very edge, we get pushed further forwards and can just barely grab the ledge on the other side. We can use another boosted uppercut to clear a similar gap later. After going down the slide and automatically jumping off the end without pressing X, we land in the prison swimming pool. As I mentioned earlier, pressing X while swimming is legally not a jump. For the sake of semantics, we will instead refer to this action as a dolphin.
Oh, look at me, I'm a flippin' little dolphin, let me flip for you, I know something!
With just a few more super dives, we can climb out the window into Haven City proper and rendezvous with Core. There's some required combat here, but combat rarely involves jumping in the first place. I should mention now that Jak II is structured very differently from Jak I. Instead of being a collectathon, it's a GTA clone, with a series of missions to play one after the other. Our next mission takes us to Dead Town, which is flooded with toxic swamp water. This water is too deep to stand in, but too shallow to swim in, meaning we can neither uppercut nor dolphin out. Thankfully, there's an extremely simple solution. Just don't fall in the water. The final climb introduces falling platforms which reduce the time we have to do an uppercut. Some of these platforms really don't like to accept the square input for seemingly no reason. They also crumble when ledge grabbing them, so you have to land directly on top of them. There's also several poles here, and grabbing one while spinning has a tendency to make Jak face the wrong direction. By jumping upwards and approaching from the left, we can fix that. After several failed attempts, I finally managed to reach the top of the tower and grab the banner. Next we head to the pumping station, where we use a boosted uppercut to clear this gap, then a super dive to climb this ledge. We also need to uppercut over some electric barriers, but damage boosting through them is also an option. This gap was a bit trickier, but a boosted uppercut and spin can still reach the ledge. This level is also where we fight our first metalheads. Each unique metalhead we kill drops a skull gem we can collect, which we can then spend on upgrades for Dark Jak at the Oracle. We only have 10 right now though, and the first upgrade requires 25. Before we can access any more, we have to head back to the fortress for the tank chase. The main downside of having to uppercut everywhere is that we have to come to a complete stop in order to properly crouch. It doesn't slow us down too much though, and even if we accidentally set off a turret's laser, we can roll to dodge it. After uppercutting our way across several moving platforms, we can blow up the ammo and escape with the red security pass. The next mission is a delivery to the Hip Hog Saloon, which is done entirely with a zoomer and is thus a freebie. Completion of this mission unlocks our first weapon, the scatter gun, which we get to test out in the gun course. It does say to start the challenge with X, but the game is a filthy liar. We then head back to the pumping station with Sig, where we need to lower some bridges with ledge grabs. There's a bit of platforming across the water, and while the jumps themselves are doable jumpless, you can't dawdle too much or Sig will take damage from the enemies. By this point, we also have enough skull gems to unlock the Dark Bomb ability. By diving as Dark Jak, we create a shockwave that instantly kills every enemy in the vicinity. I don't recommend going for the Dark Blast upgrade though. While you can execute it with a crouching uppercut, it takes you out of Dark Jak instantly, making it much easier to waste. Considering Dark Jak takes less damage than Vanilla Jak, we do not want to waste it. The next mission is to destroy turrets in the sewers, for which the Dark Bomb comes in especially handy. Though I recommend saving it for the fourth turret, as it has a tendency to shoot you mid-air. My successful attempt actually missed the Dark Bomb and had to shoot it with the scattergun. The third turret likes to knock Jak into the water, but that's only a mild inconvenience for us. If you don't want a dolphin out, you can just stand on this pipe. Completing this mission grants us access to the Blaster mod, allowing for long-range attacks at a decent rate of fire. The training course requires us to press X for real this time, but we can uppercut and press it in the air to avoid jumping. From here, the mission tree starts branching out a bit. While we do have to do every mission, we get to choose the order we do them in. We can easily rescue Vin at the strip mine, defend Ashlyn at the pumping station, and beat Crew's time trial to the stadium, unlocking the green and yellow security passes in the process. The drill platform and mountain temple missions were a bit trickier, but still doable with super dive attacks. But take 3 guesses what happens the instant we grab the jet board in the stadium.
You can get on and off the jet board at any time. You can jump on your jet board.
Fail.
Yup, we can't even enter the jetboard course until we demonstrate to Kira that we know how to jump. If we can't enter the course, then we can't do the jetboard challenge, which means we can't set up the palace infiltration arc at the end of Act 1. If we want to progress through the story, we have no choice but to do a major sequence break that I know you've been waiting for. Just south of the palace is the loading zone for Mars Tomb. This loading zone is always active from the start of the game, but is normally inaccessible until the end of Act 2. If we can reach that loading zone early, we can skip ahead on the mission chart. Unfortunately, going over the wall jumpless is not an option. So instead, we'll have to go under it. To do that, we'll have to follow a speedrun route known as Yellow Barrier Skip. Grab a large single-seat car and bring it to this wall in the industrial area. The speedrun usually jumps with the car to get some extra dismount height and go out of bounds, but we can't do that. Instead, drive slightly in front of the wall, uppercut, and grab the front bumper. Wait for the car to get close enough and drop down through the wall. Now we can access the area on the other side of the wall while bypassing a loading trigger for part of the ground. Grab any zoomer from here, head towards the unloaded ground while in the top lane, and turn right towards the bazaar. You normally can't bring cars into this area, so the roofs have no collision. By driving through them, we can get to another floorless area while still loading the palace area. Press R2 to drop down under the ground, then mash it so you don't hit the kill plane. Drive under the statue's fence, get back into the top lane, and dismount into the hallway to load the tomb. We're not done yet though. Because we haven't done the prior missions, the cutscene that opens the door doesn't play. We'll have to go around the door instead. The ledges on the side of the room are considered slippery surfaces. If we try to dive into one, Jak won't land properly, preventing us from using super dive attacks. We can still uppercut off them though, albeit with very little consistency. If we uppercut and spin in just the right way, we can get solid footing at the top of the pillar, allowing us to uppercut over the door frame and reach the tomb proper out of bounds. The second test of manhood, i.e. the door on the right, is largely cerebral in nature. The only relevant parts are the water sections, which we can just dolphin out of, and the tile puzzles, which we can just uppercut through. And I've got even better news. By playing the cutscene at the end of the path, we completed the mission past the second test of manhood, which is all the way at the end of Act 2. This automatically marks every single prior mission as complete, and gives us the rewards for those missions, including the Vulcan Fury, ammo capacity and rate of fire upgrades, and the jet board. However, we can't actually leave the tomb without doing the first test of manhood as well. The platforming section is fairly simple, though it does require proper timing with the spikes. But once we get to the basement, we stop playing Jak II and start playing Crash Bandicoot. Daxter can't even crouch, let alone uppercut, making it impossible to finish the chase sequence jumpless.
This is what happens when they drop my name from the title.
The good news is, there's a method speedrunners use to skip the Daxter section entirely. The bad news is, it uses some out-of-bounds shenanigans that require at least 2 jumps to execute. Far better than the 27 it would take to do it legit, but still not ideal. To do it completely jumpless, we'll have to start the run over from scratch. Make sure you still have a spare save file from before entering the tomb, and that you're not currently in an active mission. Grab a single seat zoomer and damage it until it's on fire. Drive straight into a wall, pause right before the collision, and select Restart Mission. If you do it right, the zoomer will explode during the fade out, and you'll still be able to control Jak while the screen is black. Welcome to the Invulnerability Glitch, Part 1. In this state, Jak is immune to almost all damage, and is invisible to all enemies. He can't trigger cutscenes either though, which is a pretty important requirement for the tomb. However, Jak is still capable of receiving fall damage, which we can easily get from the highway near the sewer entrance. This triggers the Invulnerability Glitch Part 2, which restores our ability to watch cutscenes. This will last for the rest of the session until we die or bonk against a wall, the latter of which can be avoided by just not rolling. With Invulnerability 2 active, we can do Mars Tomb Skip as before, and make our way to the first test of manhood. I recommend bringing at least the scattergun with you to kill the spiders, as touching them in the wrong way can remove invulnerability. While you still have it though, you can just swim in the dark eco and dive under the wall to skip straight to the basement. Once you reach the basement, kill all but one spider, start the boulder chase, run backwards past the boulder, and lure the last spider into the corner. If the spider lunges at the right moment, Daxter will be lifted up slightly and instantly swap back to Jak. We do still need to actually finish the chase sequence though, and the boulder is still moving at a snail's pace. Make sure every single spider is dead so you don't lose invulnerability, then sip a latte as you wait for it to roll ahead. Once the boulder reaches the pillar, you can sneak past and overtake it, and the giant spider will never spawn. Be extremely careful with your uppercuts from here. If you die, you have to restart all the way from the city. Once you climb the tower and reach the doorway, Daxter will run ahead, teleporting Jak back to the basement. From here, you can do the pole jumping course to reach the button and finally complete the first test of manhood. After wrapping up the second test of manhood all over again, we can fight Baron Praxis casually and finally leave the tomb with 60% of the game already done. Unfortunately, Mars Tomb is the latest mission we can skip to. Every subsequent mission must be done in the intended order. But what about construction site skip? The final mission is unlocked by a cutscene at the construction site, and viewing that cutscene is all you do there. So what's stopping you from going to the construction site early? The colorblind playtesters at Naughty Dog, that's what. Sure, we could theoretically do some out-of-bounds shenanigans to get into the construction site, but the cutscene doesn't play. The ability to watch this cutscene at any point prior to completing the Defend Stadium mission was patched out before the game was even released. Construction site skip is only possible today via the August build mod for the open goal version of Jak II. And as awesome as that version is, playing an unofficial mod for an unofficial PC port of Jak II is not the same thing as playing Jak II. We have no choice but to rescue our friends at the fortress. While it isn't nearly as hard as the tomb, it does still present a challenge. For the opening room, I recommend clearing out all the guards with either the Blaster or the Vulcan Fury before going for any of the buttons. You'll need some boosted uppercuts for a couple of them, but once you get there, you can just dive onto the button. Also, be aware that you can't spin in the air while the Vulcan is equipped. You'll have to either stow it or swap to a different weapon. After uppercutting across the turrets, we come to a half-pipe ramp. Jak can't make it up here with uppercuts alone, but luckily we've got another tool at our disposal. Mounting or dismounting the jet board gives you a tiny bit of height, just enough to make it up the ramp. Just one more uppercut over the pit and we're done. The mission tree branches out again here, and I recommend starting with escorting Jinx and company in the sewers. Believe it or not, you don't actually have to protect them too much. It's your own life you should worry about! Near the end of the level are two sets of metalheads that fire lasers along the ground, and dodging them is extremely difficult with only uppercuts. You'll want to have as much health and Dark Eco as possible on approach, take out the first set with the Vulcan Fury, and use Dark Jak to approach and kill the second set. Play it extremely safe in the final ambush, and you should be able to survive long enough to commit vandalism. Plus, after doing that mission, we can pick up our final weapon, the Peacemaker, which comes in handy during the Bombot mission. We then have two racing missions in a row, the Class 2 knife race at the stadium, and a one-on-one with Errol through the city. The vehicles for these races can jump with R1 as well as L1, which is equally illegal. The stadium racetrack has several shortcuts across a pit, but we can't make it without jumping, even with a turbo boost. Unfortunately, the AI racers have no such qualms, and the odds of all of them dying are extremely low. There is a lap skip glitch that speedrunners use, but I'm pretty sure it requires jumping to execute. It took me a few tries, but I was eventually able to get a clean run by saving my turbos for the straightaways, winning with a time of 2:34. The Errol race, meanwhile, works a bit differently. You have to drive through accelerator rings to follow the course, and the mission fails you if you hit the rings out of order or stray too far from the course. There is a sneaky shortcut that speedrunners take near the Mars Tomb entrance to make the later rings spawn early, but it has the caveat that you can't hit any of them. This becomes impossible in areas like this ramp, so we pretty much have to do it legit. Which, after a few retries, I managed to do with a time of 2:37, despite several early mistakes. We then have two simultaneous roadblocks. Destroy Eggs at Strip Mine is a jetboard obstacle course, with most of those obstacles being grind rails. We can dismount the board to get off the rail, but getting on is the hard part. For gaps preceding rails, I did a boosted uppercut followed by a spin, then mounted the board in the air while holding circle to land on the rail. Unfortunately, that doesn't work for this rail, which has a gap in the middle. There aren't any viable out-of-bounds routes past here, trust me, I tried, and Jak doesn't like the idea of standing on the rail himself. I sadly had to use one jetboard jump to get past here. Thankfully, the cutscene trigger is accessible just by boarding off the edge. The other mission we have to do is get Life Seed in Dead Town, which introduces the Titan suit. Since there is no Titan suit in Jak 1, I wasn't able to conclusively determine whether it was legally capable of jumping. The only source I could find on the matter was the American instruction manual, which calls the move a boost jump. If we operate under the assumption that boost jumps count as jumps, completing this mission with the Titan suit requires 11 jumps. And good luck finishing that path without the Titan suit, because literally nothing else can destroy the walls or knock over the pillars. But who says we need that path? The mission ends when we play the cutscene, the trigger for which is in Samos's hut. Using the jet board, we can travel across the water and reach the path you normally take during the Project Site mission. From here, we can use Jak II's most infamous movement tech, the hover glitch. When riding the jet board, you can do tricks in the air by moving the left stick and pressing L1 or R1. If you press left or right and L1, but only move the stick halfway, you can cancel the animation with any other trick. If you mash up an L1 during this moment, Jak will get infinite height in whatever direction he's moving, allowing us to fly up to the hut. There's just one problem. That first left and L1 trick can only be performed if Jak is both airborne and travelling upwards, which can only be achieved by jumping. It's better than the 11 jumps on the intended path, but 1 jump is still more than 0 jumps. But would you believe, literally half an hour after I beat this level, speedrunner Bintendo42 found that 0th jump. Turns out you can do a trick from the pile of wood at the start of the level and hover up from there. And as if that wasn't enough, she then found another jumpless hover in the strip mine that skips the final rail. So while my personal score at this point in the game is 2 jumps, the theoretical minimum is 0. Unfortunately, the hover glitch won't help us with destroying the drill platform tower. The first half of the mission requires us to destroy 10 control panels, which can only be done with the Titan suit. There is a checkpoint at the bottom of the last elevator, but it only activates after we've already destroyed them. And of course, it is impossible to get the Titan suit into the elevator without using its boost jump. We can still make it pretty far by walking along the roof out of bounds, then gliding down into the level past several doors. You can glide without jumping by holding X while the game is paused, then walking off. Unfortunately, this strategy can only get you as far as this platform, with 11 boost jumps remaining before the elevator. The Jak II jumpless run has officially failed. No time to mourn it though, because we still need to get out of here. We have 75 seconds to reach the exit, and there are several pits in the way. While they're all individually possible with uppercuts, they are simply too slow. We need to make liberal use of both rolls and the jetboard throughout the whole sequence, making strategic dismounts as we go. But even then, the flame platforms can still mess you up, because unlike a certain other Naughty Dog platformer, their cycles don't reset upon death. After 25 minutes of attempts, I finally got this run.
Backup systems failing.
I wonder if these are on a global timer or a localized timer.
Yeah, so
Eco-grid growing unstable.
I think they're a global timer. But unlike, say, Crash, the timer doesn't reset when you die. Oh, I'm an idiot. Alright, enter elevator with 15. Come on. Yes! Finally!
Another blow to the Baron, my good friends. Very soon, our fortunes will change.
With the drill platform behind us, we can rescue the lurkers for Brutder with absolutely no issues before entering the Class 1 knife race. Unlike the previous track, this one has shortcuts that are actually accessible for us. Not that it's any easier, Errol puts up a much bigger fight than the other drivers and will frequently take the shortcuts himself. On one occasion, he even managed to kill himself and me at the same time. Eventually, I managed to just barely win with a time of 2:40. With the entire Crimson Guard on our tail, we take refuge in the palace. Getting the black security pass here is just a matter of waltzing into the throne room. The hard part is getting out again, with the opening room having multiple pole jumps and platforms that fall away too fast to uppercut reliably. You can climb them faster by doing multiple consecutive super dive attacks. Just a bit further ahead is a window that you need to rail grind on with the jet board. We can easily get onto the rail from ground level, but the angle of the rail isn't conducive to a safe landing afterwards. After several failed attempts, I managed to dismount while holding right, spin in the air, and grab the ledge. In the next room, we have multiple parallel grind rails, none of which reach all the way from one side of the pit to the other. What I found worked best was to do a boosted uppercut to the third row, grind on the right side to link with the next rail, dismount to reach the last rail, and grind the rest of the way. Compared to that, grinding on the chandelier was a pushover, as were the last few super dives to reach the elevator. With the black security pass in our possession, we can take the shuttle to the weapons lab. The main gimmick here is the conveyor belts, which we are virtually powerless to resist without the jet board. This becomes a bit inconvenient when we reach this belt with the saw blades, but a quick dismount and remount makes light work of it. After shooting these two platforms down, we have to make a very scary dismount over some toxic waste to just barely grab the ledge. The good news is there's a checkpoint immediately after. The bad news is you're gonna need it. There's a similar gap immediately after, and this one you have to repeat after every single death. It's not 100% consistent, but you can generally make it if you dismount right after passing the support poles. The conveyor belts in the next room are much easier to navigate, though you'll need to uppercut up to these platforms from further upstream. For the final stretch, you'll want to take out the guards from a distance so they don't mess up your platforming, and save as much blue ammo as possible for the last batch of ball bots. There's a checkpoint once you reach the boss fight with crew, and the fight itself requires no jumping by design. After a relaxing game of whack-a-mole, we come to the single hardest level in the entire game, the Underport. The Titan suit shows up once again, and the door literally won't open unless we hop in. We can actually make it surprisingly far, as the stairs function like slopes. Very janky slopes, but slopes nonetheless. Unfortunately, we're cut off just before the part with the sunken platforms, making it impossible to proceed any further. At least, not with the Titan suit. If you stand just outside the door in the port, punch east, and quickly mount the jet board, you can make the ground disappear and land in the Underport, skipping past the Titan suit. The level isn't fully loaded right now though, but this will correct itself if the camera passes too close to the door. If you're still inside this room when that happens, you're effectively soft-locked. It is possible to get a jumpless hover from the mine anchor while traveling southwest, which will not only allow you to load the level as you go out of bounds, but will also let you fly all the way to the end of the Titan suit section. Unfortunately, I was unable to actually pull this jumpless hover off myself, so my personal jump counter goes up by 1. We haven't quite skipped everything though. The door into the final airlock won't open if Jak is on foot. Thankfully, if we backtrack a little, we can find a small piece of rubble we can use for another jumpless hover straight into the airlock. And, unlike the others, I actually did manage to do this one myself. We're not out of the woods yet though. After doing a precise jetboard dismount to grab this ledge, we have to escort Sig through the rest of the Underport. This involves 2 separate centipede chases, and they move much faster than I can. In the first chase, I got a head start with a board dismount followed by multiple consecutive boosted uppercuts and some rapid board mounts and dismounts on the moving platforms. This was just barely enough to escape. After using an uppercut and spin to push the block into the rest area, we have an even harder centipede chase featuring invertible platforms to shoot. We can get across the first one, but we move so slowly that the centipede catches up to us before we can reach the second set of 2, which itself is more difficult to cross quickly. After multiple hours of attempts, I then remembered I kept a backup save from the city. If we enter the centipede chase with the invulnerability glitch, the centipede can't kill Jak, which would give us all the time in the world to make these jumps. There are only two problems with this strategy. The first is that the centipede only stops moving when it catches up to Jak, and it can still flip a platform back upside down while you're standing on it. And the second is that to even try this strategy, you'd have to get invulnerability from the industrial district, bring it all the way to the underport, nail both jumpless hovers, and do both centipede chases all in one sitting. Which I'm not even going to pretend that I actually did. Remember, I was using debug mode for extra checkpoints. But, by some miracle, I pulled that jump off by the skin of my teeth and managed to uppercut all the way to the end. The rest of the game is mostly combat focused, and in case you didn't notice, we still had invulnerability after the underport. I did manage to lose it on the Defend Stadium mission by letting young Samos die, but we don't actually need it. Even the final gauntlet through the Metalhead nest barely requires uppercutting, letting us take on the final boss, Metalcore. The only thing that even remotely requires any height is the shockwave attack in Phase 3. While it may look like a giant wall thanks to a colorblind programmer at Sony's PS4 emulation department, the actual hitbox is short enough to uppercut over. With enough patience and just a little luck, there's nothing stopping you from ending this run.
Got him! Oh! Oh, it's over! It's finally over! Oh! Oh! I'm gonna get a drink. I have earned the drink.
After 35 hours, 51 minutes game time, 63 days real time, and 263 gigabytes worth of footage, the Jak II jumpless run ends with a personal score of 14 jumps and a theoretical score of 11. And I am never playing Jak II ever again. If you want to shave off those last 3 jumps yourself and do it without debug mode as a fallback, I will pay for your therapy myself. If you actually value your sanity, you can watch the livestream archives in the description. Special thanks to everyone in the Jak speedrunning Discord for their help, particularly Bog and Bintendo42 for finding the jumpless hover routes. See you next year for Jak 3, and I will see you down under.